Bradley Stalder, Ryan Reynolds here with you, man versus machine. Ryan, it's week 7, and it feels like we've entered into another not free agency period, but like another major transaction period in the NFL. 2 major trades going down. How excited were you that we had transactions, actually not injuries, to report on?
Yeah. I mean, it's the one thing that's been missing in football for a while. Is like, why aren't there more trade deadline deals for teams that are falling out of it? So excited. I hope this sets a precedent for years going forward too.
Yeah, very exciting. We're going to dive into these trades, what the fantasy and real life NFL implications are for all of the parties involved, short term, long term, how you want to approach these. Ryan and I will have you covered for Davante Adams trade, Amari Cooper trade. We're also going to dwell, after we go through the trades, we're going to look at some of the depth charts, the running back situations that may have shifted over the last couple of weeks, or that we anticipate to have a new wrinkle. So we'll look at some running back backfields. Well, speaking of Fields, Justin Fields may not be starting here in week 7. We'll talk about that situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then a few other players who are either recovering from injury or who are out, and what those fantasy implications are. Ryan, let's get started with the Davante Adams trade. This has been one of the most popular landing spots for Davante Adams. It ever since he was traded to the Vegas Raiders, there'd always been some rumblings that, he may end up back with Aaron. We knew that his chemistry is unparalleled with Aaron Rodgers. Yes, Derek Carr was a good partner with him, given the Fresno State college connection, everything like that. But Derek Carr is now in his second year in New Orleans. The Raiders aren't going anywhere. They're aside from Brock Bowers, really they're lacking a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. So Davante Adams is traded to the New York Jets, whose window is closing. We'll start with the Raiders trading Davante Adams. What was your initial reaction to this trade that most people had guessed would eventually happen, but maybe now? Why now?
Yeah, I mean, I view the Raiders as a day one rebuild. Their coaches playing musical chairs with their quarterbacks. It's Aiden. I've never liked Aiden O'Connell too much, and Gardner Minshew's. If you're going to start the season with him, why are you pulling him in week 3? It's just a weird environment going on there. And like you said, their only real piece for like 5 years down the road is Brock Bowers. Maybe left tackle Colton Miller. Like, that's pretty much it. So I get why they traded him. I think they should follow it up with trading Maxx Crosby too, like they did with Khalil Mack years ago.
Yeah, the trade of Maxx Crosby is one that's very interesting. Certainly nothing officially reported, but when we're putting 2 and 2 together, the Lions seem like a natural fit. Crosby has that dog in him. It seems like it fits the mentality of the Detroit Lions. Aiden Hutchinson obviously out for the year with a nasty fracture of his leg. Just as a side note, like, all of my in-laws, my wife's side of the family, they're diehard Lions fans, and they've been more dying than hard, throughout their career. But lately, there've been hope injected into Lions fandom. And Aiden Hutchinson, one of the players who grew up in this area, he went to school like 10 minutes from where I live right now. I've beloved by the community, went to U of M, the whole bit, top draft pick. For this is devastating, not only for the Detroit Lions as a team, but also for their fandom. So the Maxx Crosby is as close as a 1-to-1 replacement as you could get. So I like the trade idea. If Maxx Crosby could go anywhere, I love Detroit. Do you view anyone else as a possible suitor for Maxx Crosby?
Yeah, I think he could make it anywhere, but for me, it would be the Lions or the Bears. I think if he goes to the Bears, it just makes their defense ridiculous. Their pass defense is just an absolute monster. And, the truth is, I honestly think the NFC North might send 4 teams to the playoffs. Like, I think that's legitimately in play. I definitely think they have 4 of the 7 best teams in the NFC. So, but like you said with Hutchinson too, like, then next year you get both of them, and now you're cooking with gas when that happens.
Oh, the Lions. I mean, they cooked the Dallas Cowboys so badly, pulling out all the trick plays. Like Ben Johnson, please keep some of those saved up when you need them. Like it's okay. So Davante Adams, he gets traded to the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, still in New York, not playing great, but also not imploding. Garrett Wilson, though, he earned 22 targets in a game. Like he was a hyper targeted wide receiver, but now you enter another alpha into this receiving core. How do you anticipate Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams coexisting in this Jets offense?
Yeah, I think in some ways it will help Garrett Wilson potentially maybe be a little bit more efficient because teams aren't going to really be able to game plan for him. On the other side of the coin, his volume's definitely going to get hurt. So definitely it's a wonderful thing for Aaron Rodgers. I think it's a good thing for Adams too, just because of the jump from Aiden O'Connell to Aaron Rodgers is, similar to the Deadpool actor to me, or vice versa, rather. We're talking about a massive, massive chasm there. So good for Adams. I think it'll be good for Wilson. Like if you're a dynasty manager, I think it's probably good for him in that, meaning his price is probably going to go down a little bit, and he has a mentor now to a degree. But this season, I'm sure his target share is going to dip 5% or so going forward.
So for the record, we'll be updating this throughout the week, but going into week number 7, the player profiler projections have Davante Adams as wide receiver 28 and Garrett Wilson as projected wide receiver 38. So as of right now, maybe that's a little low, but when they're both feeding off of each other, it's hard to see massive upside for both of them existing at the same time. The other part is that the Jets have a strong defense. They're typically not going to get into shootouts. Rodgers is one of the slowest pace of play quarterbacks in the NFL. So the volume is not going to be there. It has to be the efficiency that's there for the Jets. This is good news, I think, for Aaron Rodgers, though, from a fantasy perspective. He no longer is like a back end mid quarterback two. He now has more potential to access like low end quarterback one numbers with Davante Adams in the red zone, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely no question a good thing for him, especially given the rapport he has with Adams and the fact that even if someone game plans for Garrett Wilson now, you go from him kind of having to force the ball to Alan Lazard a little much to now you have Davante Adams. So yeah, he's definitely a high end streamer, I'd say at this point. Like if you have them in a good matchup against a soft pass defense, he still has some big ones left in him.
Well, you mentioned him. It's Alan Lazard. Poor Lazard. We had been talking about Lazard for some time. If you've been following man versus machine for the first 6 weeks or even before that, we had been talking almost every week about Lazard, and the projections right now for player profile for week 7, wide receiver 71. I think it's going to be that precipitous of a fall off. Like he was getting a lot of touchdowns and Mike Williams hadn't stepped up. So Lazard, wide receiver 2, but now more like wide receiver 5/6.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's a guy that you could. I'd probably wait and hold for a couple weeks unless you have to drop him. But he's a guy I could definitely see being dropped in the vast majority of fantasy leagues over the next month.
Oh, so sad. Oh, we saw some nice spike weeks. We loved it while it was there.
Yeah.
But one other piece that was just reported today, Mike Williams missed practice due to quote unquote personal reasons. And there's a lot of speculation now that Davante Adams is on the team. Mike Williams not getting the role, still recovering from the injury, the ACL, right? He was coming back from that from last year, missed most of last year for the Chargers. And does Mike Williams get traded? And if so, where are some good places for him to land?
Yeah, I think he has to, especially since Rodgers went out of his way to point out that he ran the wrong route, the interception he threw. If Rodgers said that, it's probably true, but saying that publicly was a little rough. And like you said, there's really almost no reason for him to be there now. So it sucks because I think he'd fit with the Rams. There's just no reason for him to go out and get him. Like Matthew Stafford can, turn anyone a contested catch player into a massive performer. He might make a little sense in Detroit as a complimentary piece. He has a different skill set than everyone there. Don't know how the money works there. I think he's actually kind of cheap this year going forward, but the Lions make a little bit of sense. The Chiefs make some sense because of their holes. I think with Dallas, he'd just be another guy that they'd have that isn't what he was, like Brandon Cooks.
Yep.
So, but even still, like, it would be worth kicking the tires on him. Maybe I think those would be my top 3 spots.
2 other places, obviously, you're going to throw out there, maybe longer shots. Washington could use a wide receiver 2-3, especially on the outside. Luke McCaffrey is dominating the slot, but there are some guys, they're just rotating guys outside like De'Ami Brown, right? It's Mike Williams, big jump over him. And the other is Pittsburgh. I think that would be an interesting, he would be an improvement over Van Jefferson, right? Over Calvin Austin, maybe. Yeah. I mean, Austin's got the speed, but they don't have a player like Big Mike.
No, those make sense, especially Washington, because they have a high caliber passing attack. And with Russell Wilson coming back, I mean, Mike Williams has some skill set similarities like Cortland Sutton, who Wilson played with in Denver. So I like those 2 spots too.
Yeah. So Mike Williams on the trade block, Alan Lazard, we're fading him into oblivion in like a couple weeks. We got to see it though, because the chemistry won't go away. Like Lazard still could offer week to week best ball value of, let's say, wide receiver 3 heights.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm approaching it. Certainly not someone that we're not having a lot of confidence putting him into our lineups, but in a best ball situation, sure, maybe if you've got seasonally managed best ball leagues. Some of you do. Some of you do.
They do exist. Yeah.
Those do exist. On the flip side, Ryan, we did talk a little bit about the Raiders and how they struggle to produce anything on offense, but they do have a couple pieces that are interesting. Jakobi Meyers is always an interesting player. He's like not quite Tyler Lockett, but an underrated player like Tyler Lockett was in that same vein. And I think that we'll be able to see him featured. Unfortunately, he had suffered an ankle injury a little over a week ago. So we'll see if he's progressed and ready for week 7. But it's going to be the Jakobi Meyers, Brock Bowers show moving forward. How high can both of these players for Vegas go, given Davante Adams vacated targets, and yet at the same time, the limiting quarterback factor?
Yeah, I think for Brock Bowers, I think the best way I can put this is after week 1, I said that I already think he's the best tight end in football. Then I have a team with Dalton Kincaid and Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers has been the, entrenched starter already for a couple of weeks, and now there's no way he's moving off that. Kincaid's a bye week fill-in, maybe a flex play at this point. So I think it's very, very possible that Bowers would be a rookie of the year contender if they weren't 2 historic quarterbacks in play this year. And, I think he could finish number 1 overall at the position at season's end.
Ooh, you'd love to see. I mean, he is up there with Kittle.
Yeah.
You're taking him over Kittle. That's how you're going season long, Ryan?
Yeah, I think he'll be more consistent, Kittle. Kittle's like a really nice spike player, but they have so many options there. Like, he'll give you a 2 for 30 on occasion, where Bowers is probably going to see volume every week, even though it'll be inefficient volume, maybe even more often than not.
Are there any other considerations or things that people should take away from this Davante Adams trade that maybe are being overlooked or not thought about enough, or people need to consider?
Well, I'll say this just from a football standpoint. The Jets are, like you said, they're windows now. So doubling down a little bit, I kind of get it, because even if you fail this year, like, you're already in a mess over the next few years. So I get it. They have a pretty manageable schedule over the next few weeks too. So like they could bounce back a little. And with the Raiders, like we talked about, this team's going nowhere. They're very lucky they have 2 wins. They could very, very well be a winless team now. So I think getting rid of Adams makes sense, and seeing if you can get even more than you got out of Jakobi Meyers last year, because Meyers was, one of the more surprising producers last season. So hopefully we see more of that in the coming weeks.
Jakobi Meyers, one of my most drafted wide receivers, just behind AJ Brown. So it's good to see AJ Brown back on the field, Ryan. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about the Amari Cooper trade, all the things with Cleveland and Buffalo. But first, a word about our DFS Dominator app here at Player Profiler.
DFS getting harder every year, but we're here to make it easier with the DFS Dominator, because I know a lot of optimizers keep coming out. Oh, our optimizer. What about this optimizer? But that optimizer. Well, we have a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Dario, Billy, the award-winning projections at playerprofiler.com, and builds the best lineups for cash games that have both upside and stability, because that's what you want. It's a couple clicks, boom, boom, boom. You get the best possible lineup for your cash games. But for tournaments, traditional optimizers don't work. That's why we have a Lineup Genius, which takes you through the process of building lineups the way they should be built. Which quarterbacks you want to be overweight on, then building stacks, then setting runbacks, then optimizing, and generating up to 150 lineups that you can easily import into DraftKings, into FanDuel. That's the DFS Dominator. It's only $45 a year, not a week, a year. Just go to Player Profiler, click on the DFS Dominator from the menu, and you won't be sorry.
That's right. You won't be sorry with our DFS Dominator. Ryan, it was a whirlwind Tuesday. We didn't just get one wide receiver, Pro Bowl wide receiver traded, but we got a second one. We got one. We got another one. I felt like DJ Khaled in the middle of the day. I was like, another one. We got him. Amari Cooper was traded from the Cleveland Browns to the Buffalo Bills. Oh, this is great. This is wonderful. This is exactly what you wanted to see if you're a Buffalo fan, if you're a fantasy football investor in Amari Cooper. I think this is all positive vibes for the Amari Cooper stands and Josh Allen. Like, Josh Allen's played well enough for fantasy this year, but I think Amari Cooper gives him access to downfield big plays. Ryan, what was your reaction to the Amari Cooper trade?
Well, for years, I've said this specifically, that I think if you put Amari Cooper in Buffalo instead of Stephon Diggs, I don't think there'd be a big drop off. So now I get to see if that's actually true. So that's interesting. The thing that I think I'm the most excited about is whenever this kind of thing happens, not only do you get your wide receiver one that's an obvious upgrade at one position, it puts everyone else in a more appropriate role. Where Buffalo has a nice group of skill players, but none of them was the headliner. Now they have at least a mid-tier headliner. So, you know, especially with their easy schedule coming up, I could see the Bills offense really ascend from here.
So Amari Cooper, number 2 in air yards, number 4 in air yard share, number 5 in deep targets, number 4 in routes run, number 7 in overall targets in the NFL, 14th in target share. This was the target hog that we were looking for, because as you mentioned, like a really flat wide receiver and receiving group. Dalton Kincaid didn't take that next step. Curtis Samuel, mostly a dud so far.
Yeah.
Khalil Shakir has had his moments, his positive moments, for sure. Mac Hollins has been a regular contributor on the outside, Ryan Reynolds. Mac Hollins. If you're watching this show and you're asking, who is Mac Hollins? I mean, you should watch some Mac Hollins stuff, because his videos are very, very cool. People love him. They love him in Buffalo. I believe he has like bare feet, loves walking around in like bare feet, whatever. So, but if you're like Mac Hollins, no, Amari Cooper is the truth. And unfortunately, he was plagued by arguably the worst quarterback play that we've seen sustained for some time. To give you a perspective, Amari Cooper is number 2 in the NFL in total route wins. and yet,
yeah,
he's winning all these routes. He is wide receiver 43 on the 7th most targets. So he's winning his routes. He's earning targets, deep targets at that. and he's outside the top 40 of wide receivers. This puts Amari Cooper on the wide receiver, top 12 wide receiver question mark, like borderline. That's where I'm pegging him. Is that the right spot?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have him between 12 and 18. Like Ian Hardage posted something where Amari Cooper was, like, according to ESPN Analytics, the worst wide receiver in the league, which is one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. Where, like, what you just told me based on what I've seen on film makes sense. It's like, this guy's actually playing well. He's just, like you mentioned a couple weeks ago, Deshaun Watson's actually been the worst quarterback in the Browns' history, essentially. Like, he's been that bad.
It's been so bad.
So yeah, I mean, the chasm again between Watson and Allen is, and he doesn't even get like a weather drop off. Like, weather, there's only a few cities that I care about weather at all in. Cleveland and Buffalo are two of them. So it's not like he's going from a dome team to Buffalo. So it's even a positive on that front. Like, it's a wonderful thing for Amari Cooper.
Yeah. How many interceptions has Josh Allen thrown this year?
I think he's thrown any.
He's thrown 0 interceptions, 0 in 6 games, which is excellent.
Yeah, it's not really how he operates either.
It's gonna get the ball. So this is a bump for Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
This is a bump for Josh Allen. Right now, Josh Allen certainly still putting up like good fantasy numbers. Quarterback 6 on the season. He wasn't a massive disappointment. 5 points lower though than the last 2 years. He's averaged over 24 fantasy points each of the last 4 seasons, but about 20 fantasy points right now. Amari Cooper gets him the red zone, end zone threat, the reliable hands, the big plays, lots of targets. We're here for that. Dalton Kincaid, though, I know we mentioned that he hasn't taken a step forward, but are you optimistic that he's going to be pegged in this right role, or are we still waiting for more development for Dalton Kincaid?
Yeah, it could be a good thing for him, but I just don't think the volume's going to be there because the Buffalo's actually been more run-centric than I think most of us were expecting to this point. So I still think the volume could be a problem, and they involved Knox a little bit more last week too. So I think, and I was high on Kincaid too. So I think I'm going to end up being wrong on that one.
Right now, Dalton Kincaid projected as the tight end 7 for week 7. But that's, I think, more of a testament to how bad the tight end position is. Like, right next to him is Tucker Kraft and then Colby Parkinson at 8 and 9. That tells you all you need to know. Like, this is not an impressive group. And the floor for like tight end 7, Dalton Kincaid and below, can be 0 on any given week. Like, I don't think Njoku is going to be at 0 now. Like, I don't think his floor is there. Evan Ingram, Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, they're all in separate tiers, I think.
Yep, agreed.
Khalil Shakir, does this just limit it lowers his floor? I think the spike weeks are still there. Like, we've seen some spike weeks from Khalil Shakir, but the floor has got to be much lower now that Amari Cooper is going to be commanding all these targets.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think his volume is probably shakier now going forward, but he's in the he's in the role he should be. And while it's a different play call there now, his skill set's like Cole Beasley, and Cole Beasley did fine when Stephon Diggs was in town. Different play caller, but I think that's what you're looking at as ceiling now. It's just like solid PPR assets, 7 catches, 70 yards type games.
Khalil Shakir, the wide receiver 34 in our week 7 projections as of right now. So still pretty good. Questionable flex place as we move forward. All right. We'll shift gears from Buffalo to the Cleveland Browns. Was this trade of Amari Cooper just a raise the flag move by the Browns, like a signal of like, we're giving up on the season? Amari Cooper is their best wide receiver, one of their best, if not the best, healthy weapons because Njoku's been dealing with his injuries on and off, and Nick Chubb is coming back from injury. Like, Amari Cooper's been the one stable staple. In fact, I saw the stat, Ryan, maybe you saw this, that Rodney McLeod has scored the most touchdowns for the Browns now that Amari Cooper is gone, and he's on defense.
Oh man, yeah, it's I'm guessing what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know the contract situation off the top of my head, but it probably signals that they weren't planning on keeping him, and that they signed Jerry Jeudy to essentially be their top option. Lord help them. But yeah, I also do think it is kind of a white flag. You're trading your best skill player, essentially, barring Nick Chubb coming back miraculously from injury. So yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. They're 1-5 and they're terrible. They're hard to watch. I watch every game there. I dread watching Browns games this season.
Oh, it's been so ugly. Jerry Jeudy has been flirting with like top 40-ish wide receiver around that spot. Maybe he gets a little bit of a bump, but I don't know if there's someone who can really step in and take on a 27% target share. It's gross. It's just gross. Maybe Njoku gets a few more targets. It's still like Cedric Tillman,
Elijah Moore. Yeah.
Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
All of that it's just more ugliness for the Browns. So Deshaun Watson, if his fantasy stock was any lower, like who else is going to be scoring for the Browns? Nick Chubb, like he's coming back off of a massive knee injury. Jerome Ford's been dealing with his injuries off and on. Donta Foreman has been inconsistent this year. Nyheim Hines has been in and out of the lineup. Like, there's not been a lot to love for the Cleveland Browns right now.
Even their defense hasn't played like it did last year. So offensively, there's almost there's nothing positive I have to say about them, except for the fact that I don't know how Nick Chubb's in play to potentially play in the near future. That's shocking.
Yeah, he's just built different.
Clearly,
just built different. Okay, Ryan, will we see Jameis Winston this season in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I mean, if this continues, they're going to have to eventually they're going to have to stop this at some point because it's bad. On that front, Jameis Winston isn't good. I think what's going to happen here is he's going to come in relief in a game and he's going to throw like for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns and a half, and people are going to celebrate. And then 2 weeks later, he's going to have 3 turnovers in the first half. Like that's the real Jameis Winston. So, but I do think at some point they're going to have to make a change because Watson's essentially been the worst quarterback in the league. And I get that he makes so much money, but at some point you're gonna lose the locker room if you keep marching him out there.
Sunken cost fallacy, right?
Yes, yeah. This is it in textbooks, across the country now. You're gonna have this is an example of what the sunken cost fallacy is and why you need to not get caught up into this kind of thing.
It's gross. It is.
It's bad.
It's so gross on so many accounts. Arguably the worst trade in NFL history, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean the one the Bears made with the Panthers is up there, but this one is.
I think it takes the cake.
Yeah, it might because they're going to be able to move on from Bryce Young in the near future without too much, of a cost. Where like this is damaging on all fronts, and Houston's a monster now too. On top of it,
it's unreal. The bad contract. Houston is better. But also, like, the unspoken elephant in the room is all of the things that were happening with Deshaun Watson off the field. Like, all of those things that the ownership still decided, even with all of these concerns, yes, let's give this guy the biggest guaranteed contract in history.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone was going to earn that, it definitely was not him. Definitely not in that situation. So, they kind of deserve it.
Poor Browns fans.
I
grew up in the Cleveland area and not rooting for the Browns because they didn't exist like the year we moved. But I feel for all my relatives who are Browns fans, and I feel for you. I feel for you, Cleveland. Yes. All right, enough depressing talk, Ryan. Let's move on to a little bit more excitement. The Tampa Bay backfield has gotten a little exciting. Rachaad White was out for week 6. Bucky Irving certainly held his own, got the touchdown. But Sean Tucker, baby. There was a lot of love last year for Sean Tucker, the undrafted free agent out of Syracuse, going to Tampa and getting some opportunity. And he really didn't take advantage of it in the 2023 season. Stuck behind the likes of Chase Edmonds. You know, I'm sorry, you were mid-drink. I said that with a serious face. I said that with a serious face. It was Chase Edmonds was working ahead of our beloved Sean Tucker. But yes, he was coming off of a pretty big injury, in college. And Rachaad White has not looked explosive. If anything, Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker have looked more explosive than Rachaad White has at any point over the last couple of years. In fact, there was the 56-yard run back in week number 5, right, where Rachaad White breaks it off, but then he gets caught. Looks like he's running like 14 miles an hour, which, relatively speaking, is not very fast. Almost. Yeah. What came to mind was the Austin Eckler run from 2023, where he just got chased down, looked slow. It was a signature moment that like black swanned our entire view of that particular player. And I think that was the moment for Rachaad White. How are you approaching this now very muddled backfield with an impressive showing of Tucker and Irving with White out? How is White going to play moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, when he comes back, it could very well be a 3-man committee, which is, sucks to even say, but yeah, I don't know who it's going to be exactly. Like you said, both Irving and Tucker are more explosive than White. White's maybe the most reliable pass catcher of the group, so maybe you're looking at a situation where, kind of like KC, where like P. Ryan has the pass catching role, and maybe that's where Rachaad White steps into here, where they play a bit of a hot hand with Tucker and Irving. For fantasy, I think what I would do would be I'd probably take a shot at the cheapest one and hope something happens, but I wouldn't overpay for any of them.
Yeah, don't overpay. This could get really ugly really fast. Sean Tucker out of Syracuse, 4.44 40, 86th percentile speed score, 95th percentile bench press. Strong dude. But also what was very interesting, I had to desperation start Sean Tucker in week 6, Ryan. I had a desperation to start. And it was also a league where I got like kick return yards, and he had like 80 of those. Like, oh, wow. All right, we're cooking with gas here. Sean Tucker, baby. Number 1 in fantasy points per opportunity and number 1 in true yards per carry per Roto Underworld.
Wow
is right. Oh, it's beautiful. Oh. But Ryan, I actually have a trivia question for you before we move on, because I had a tweet that went kind of viral last night. Okay, mini viral. I don't know if you saw it. Hopefully you didn't see it, or it'll ruin it. There's a running back. There's a running back. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 in true yards per carry. Okay, before the Sean Tucker stuff. Number 1 in yards per touch. Number 1 in yards per reception, number 1 in yards per route run, number 2 in yards created per touch, number 3 in breakaway run rate, number 4 in fantasy points per opportunity, and had an 80% snap share in week 6. Who's that running back?
I mean, I thought it was Derrick Henry until you started talking about catching passes, and that I don't think it's Saquon Barkley for that reason either. Oh, man. On the season or just for last week? On the season, right?
All of those are on the season except the 80% snap share week 6.
Last week. Oh my God. I have no idea, dude. I have absolutely no idea. If it's not Derrick Henry, and I don't think it is, I have no idea.
Someone in the chat is guessing Tyrone Tracy, and the answer is not Tyrone Tracy. No, it's not him. In fact, a lot of people were saying, is it Tucker? Is it Ray Davis? Is it Bucky Irving himself? Hilo guessed Bucky Irving, just for reference. J.K. Dobbins is not J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah.
Austin Eckler.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wasn't even on my radar. Yeah.
Austin Eckler has been crushing it. Yes. And Brian Robinson may or may not play in week 7, but I don't think it matters because they are playing Carolina.
Yeah.
And Carolina just allowed, the RB4 and RB9 in the same week. So there's room for Austin Eckler.
You know what's funny about that, Bradley? I thought about Brian Robinson, but I know he didn't play last week, and I didn't even think about Eckler.
But Eckler earned 80% of snaps. Isn't that wild?
It is.
80%.
Good for him, man. Good for him. He's always been a cool guy too.
Yeah, we love Austin Eckler. We'll stay in the running back room because there have been some other shifts in depth chart movement. Very interesting in Cincinnati. Zach Moss was the snap share leader, the touches leader, the fantasy point scoring leader for the first 3 weeks. But then the tides changed between weeks 3 and 4. Chase Brown has earned at least 12 touches each of the last 3 weeks. He's been at least 13 points and half-point scoring each of the last 3 weeks. He is an efficiency monster. Do you think that this trend is going to change, going to continue, or do you think it's just Zach Moss has been dealing with a little bit of injury and they're just getting the rookie a little bit more, or the second-year player a little bit more involved? How are you approaching Cincinnati? Is Chase Brown like the buy high?
I like this. I actually have a lot to say about this because we've talked about this a few times, where early in the year I said, Chase Brown's now a premium stash, essentially. Zach Moss is the more reliable player. He's better in pass protection. He's a veteran, but he also fumbled in the third quarter of last Sunday night's game. I don't think he played again after that. So, and on the other side of things, Chase Brown is a more dynamic athlete. He's a better runner. So he's a more dangerous player. And perhaps more importantly, when Brown fumbled late in the game, where if the Giants recovered that could have been a bit of a nightmare for Cincinnati. He then ripped off a score on the next play, and they left him in. So I do
30
think
yards is beautiful.
Yeah, I do think it's trending in Brown's direction, and and Cincinnati has a pretty soft schedule over the coming weeks too. So I don't think the days of bell cow runners are almost over. There's very few of them now, so I don't think we're going in that direction. But I could see it flip flopping where Brown gets more opportunities than Moss does, at least in the short term.
Yeah, Chase Brown is one of the players that was featured on an article that was published today in my Win the Flex. We're going to continue to ride Chase Brown until it's proved otherwise.
Yep.
Like, we want to be in on Chase Brown. We saw what Joe Mixon was able to do last year with all of the opportunity. And finally, Cincinnati is starting to hit on cylinders with big games from Chase, big games from T. Higgins. The offense the motor's picking up for the Bengals. And so we want the running back that is going to have the opportunities to do that, to score. One last backfield that we want to attack here and figure out a little bit. Jerome Ford and Nick Chubb. Chubb is practicing somehow. And with a desperate Browns team who's looking for anything and everything. They just traded. We spent so much time talking about trading Amari Cooper. Like, is Nick Chubb just built different?
Yeah, I mean, I think him and Derrick Henry are just two guys that are not the same as everyone else. And like, I don't really like saying stuff like that, but I think it's true. And he's making it clear. Like, I don't know how this is happening, quite frankly, but my concern is their offensive line is still bad and the offense is terrible. So like, he's going to have to create things on his own coming off a gruesome leg injury. And I don't think he's going to be getting any kind of volume to start. Like, he's going to get eased in. But the truth of the matter is, come fantasy playoff time, he might actually like literally be like, running back 2 startable where he's an asset for you. So I did not expect to be saying that, a couple months ago, but I do think that's where we're at if he's practicing.
Nick Chubb, premium stashed right now. Put him on your IR, stash him in managed leagues. That's how you should handle him if he's on your waiver wire somehow. Although a lot of people had been drafting Chubb. I mean, he wasn't going undrafted in most leagues. However, maybe your league mate was frustrated by the fact that other players that they liked had gotten hurt and they had to drop somebody or just not producing. Like in my home league, Ryan, Chris Olave was dropped. There's a 10 teams.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 10 teams start 2 wide receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 flex, full PPR. Like, I get you're frustrated, but I mean, that's why I don't use my waiver priority at all. And I just save it for those one little moments where someone does something like that. And if a Chubb is out there, if an Olave is out there, trust the talent.
Yeah. I'll also throw this in there. I literally just on the air while we're doing this, I have a team that's leading the league in points, $500 entry. I'm very thin at running back too. I literally just looked to see if Chubb was on waivers because that's the kind of guy that could finish it off for me down the stretch.
Let's keep it going. We'll stay in division. The Pittsburgh Steelers are letting Russell Wilson get first team reps. Lots of first team reps, and they're letting people know about it. Is this the right move to move away from Justin Fields, to move toward Russell Wilson? And will this be good for, frankly, the only player that we really care about for Pittsburgh, George Pickens?
To answer your last question first, I think almost definitely Justin Fields has 160 passing yards or less in 4 games. So, well, he's a nice runner, and he's a good developmental prospect. As for instance, as a Giant fan, I would have loved if they gave up a 6th-round pick or whatever for him, because I'd play him now if I were the Giants. But I do think the Steelers are a good enough team where if there's anything even resembling old Russell Wilson still there, I think they're more dangerous with him. I'm not sure the timing's right, but they're going to be more dangerous as a passing team with him. So I get it. I don't think the timing's right, but I do get it. I do think their ceiling, I think they could go further with Russell Wilson than they can with Fields. And I definitely think it's better for Pickens.
All right. Well, we will see if that's the case. Fields carrying a lot of fantasy managers who took him late, and we're not expecting Russell Wilson to be dealing with his leg injury that was hampering him to start the season. And I think they slow played. Honestly, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers slow played his injury to milk out and see what they had in Fields, frankly.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why the timing's odd, because I agree with you. I think they slow put it too. It's like they actually just blew out the Raiders last week. It seems like a weird spot to make the shift, where if they got shut down by the Jets this week, I think it would have made more sense. But, whatever.
Well, we got news just a few hours ago that Cooper Kupp is trending toward playing. He's trending toward playing. Sean McVay opened the door when he said there is a possibility of Cooper Kupp being available for week 7. He wouldn't say these things if it wasn't on the table. And the Rams are in a spot where they really can't afford to not be playing their stars even at this point, this juncture. We're 6-7 weeks in. Puka Nacua, is still not ready to come back off of IR. Cooper Kupp, we saw wide receiver 1 overall type of usage before his own injury. If you have Cooper Kupp at this, you have to set your lineup Wednesday, October 16. Are you putting Cooper Kupp in your lineup? We got the Ryan Reynolds. We got the Ryan Reynolds nose wrinkle.
You know what's funny about this is I have a team where I've had him on IR. I have neighbors. I have DJ Moore, and I have someone else that's Jamar Chase. And I have Cooper in IR, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna play him, and I'm not gonna. That's a deep league, so there's nothing on waivers at wide receiver. I'm just gonna play him, and if he sits, he sits. That's kind of where my head's at. So my answer is yes. My answer is yes, even though it's too early to make that call.
All right. Well, Cooper Kupp practicing. We're putting him in our lineups. Puka Nacua, we are not ready yet. The New Orleans Saints, who can play for the New Orleans Saints, Ryan? Because right now, Chris Olave is out with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed had surgery on his meniscus. We are awaiting the information about what type of surgery. Based on the information I've read, it's either like a 3 to 6 week injury, but the long-term stability is not there, or he's out for the rest of the season, but that's good for him long-term, like career longevity wise. Also, Taysom Hill is not expected to play. So the Saints are missing pretty much out. Derek Carr isn't expected to play. The Saints are missing pretty much everybody except Alvin Kamara, but he's also been dealing with ribs and a hand injury. Like, he's not unscathed. He's going to play. We expect so. But who are we going to play if we're playing the New Orleans Saints?
It's like Sean Payton, and it's, I don't think we can call it a revenge game, but it's sort of a revenge game, sitting there with a voodoo doll just popping every Saints skill player. For Shaheed, I hope they take the long approach with him, because he's, burners that are quality burners are hard to find, so proceed with caution. The answer is, just Kamara, who they've been voluming into the ground already. So are they going to give him 40 touches on the short week this week? Like, I especially because it's odd. Normally, I wouldn't care that Taysom Hill's out, but with the other two guys out, you could have put some run on Taysom Hill in this game. Now it's Kamara and what do you like? I don't even remember the other guy's name. Like the guy like Mead or whatever his name, the tight end that had a touchdown last week. I don't even remember their names.
Yeah, poor Juwan Johnson. Poor Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to be back in a second. When we come back, Jonathon Brooks news, and we'll answer some questions that you put in the chat. So throw them in the chat while we hear a word from the Podfather.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free, and one of our key missions is to make as much statistics and information and deep analysis available on playerprofiler.com for free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In package to continue to make all of this possible. If you can't do All In, that's okay. We have a draft kit. Or you can just subscribe to the player rankings. Those now include tight end premium FFPC ranks, our brand new data analysis package will blow your hair back. And of course, there's our Dynasty Deluxe and our DFS Dominator. Take a moment, check out our premium services to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.
Bradley Stalder, Ryan Reynolds here with you on Man versus Machine every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Follow Ryan on Twitter, on the X Machine, at Ryan Reynolds NFL. You can follow me on Twitter as well, Bradley Stalder, at FF Stalder. I run the news desk. Ryan and I do Man versus Machine. I also do Stack Hunters periodically during the season with Dan Williamson, one of the high-stakes players, and then Stack Hunters is weekly during the off-season because it's a best ball podcast. So check those out as well. Oh, Ryan, there was, before we get into Jonathon Brooks, there was a little bit of chatter, maybe it was a few days ago, about Sam Darnold and how he was not, there's been clamoring about whether Sam Darnold would be comeback player of the year, but the NFL awards committee came out and said that it's more focused on coming back from an injury, like a big time injury. That's what we're coming back from, not like most improved player. So they offered this lens. Number one, what is your reaction to that? Do you agree with it? And two, should the NFL have both a comeback player and most improved player?
I like that. So I actually have like a really in-depth answer on this. I've been doing awards market analysis for Established the Run for 5-6 years now, and the show we did, Adam Levitan, Mark Dankenberg, and myself, we kind of started this hornet's nest because Levitan is an enormous following, and I've been there's an article that states the guidance that I forget the guy's name, but the AP guidance on essentially what it essentially says is, listen, DeMar Hamlin was supposed to win last year, and you guys voted for Joe Flacco even though he played for 5 games, so we're no longer going with the career resurrection stuff. You need to come back from an injury, an illness, etc. That they released that in May. So I do think they did that for a reason. I do think Sam Darnold, they don't want you to vote for Sam Darnold type things, even though for me personally, I do think that the career resurrection thing should be part of it. Like Sam Darnold should be in play. The guy literally got handed Adam Gase in the worst roster in the league. 5 years later or so, he's tearing it up. Like I think that's in the spirit of the award. That said, if he's not eligible, should they have a most improved player award? Yeah, 100% they should. Yes, for this exact thing.
You love the career resurrection stories. And you know what? To be fair, I was out on Sam Darnold, not because I didn't trust, O'Connell, but Sam Darnold was so bad for so long, and he still wasn't good last year with San Francisco, like when he was learning under Shanahan. So hats off to O'Connell, Minnesota Vikings. The coaching staff is really strong. My mother is a Green Bay Packers fan through and through. So am I. But she follows it from a fandom perspective, not from a fantasy perspective. And so she messaged me this weekend. She's like, "Are all of the teams in the NFC North good?" And I said, "Yes, they're all good. They could all win the Super Bowl. Like they could. The Lions are excellent. They've got arguably the best offense. The Bears have arguably the best defense. The Vikings, are the best coached, I think. And you have the Packers who have high levels of all of those things, but maybe not the highest, but they're competitive in each of those. And they got the quarterback in Jordan Love. So yeah, it's interesting to just do an NFL reflection and just take off our fancy hats for a moment and appreciate wow, we've got something special happening in the NFC North.
They're all young too, which is crazy.
Yes, they're going to be competitive for a long, long time. But a player who we expect to be coming back soon, Jonathon Brooks, getting some workout for the Carolina Panthers. We have video. We have photographic motion picture evidence that Jonathon Brooks is at practice. This is good news. The 21-day window is open. We talked previously last week about Chuba Hubbard, Jonathon Brooks, with fact or fiction, whether Chuba would maintain his lead role. I think that's going to be the case for, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks. You're not going to immediately move in Jonathon Brooks, but you want to see what you got in the second half of the season. And it depends on how torpedoed the Carolina Panthers season goes. If they're mildly competitive and Andy Dalton is keeping them close to 500 for the rest of the season, even if they're not, in the playoff picture realistically, they might get extensive looks at Jonathon Brooks and he will be a big second half winner.
Yeah, I like that. To be honest, I get why they can't do it now. They're 1-5 and they're bad. They're getting blown out every week. It doesn't matter if Andy Dalton's the quarterback or if I'm the quarterback. They're bad. They're probably going to wait till they're mathematically eliminated. And the other thing is you can't not play Chuba Hubbard now. But if he starts to fall off and, like you said, the Panthers start to fall off, you do want to get one, you want to see what you have in Brooks, and 2, you want to get his feet wet as much as you can for next year. So I'm with you. If he had big weeks through, week 14 through 17, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Huge, huge, huge. Yes. So let's take a look at some of the questions. We got about 5 minutes and then we're peacing out. Lex, plant some trees. Shout out to you. Trade Mooney and Pickens for Puka.
I'm going to say no, just because the Rams are in a situation where if they continue to falter, which they probably will because they don't have a very good roster, they're going to be super patient with him. So I'm gonna lean no there.
I'll take that deal. I'll be devil's advocate here. You got Godwin, Neighbors, Ayuk, and then to sure it up with Puka. That's the consolidation move I'm okay with. I'm okay with that one. Mac in Toes Fam says, I missed work due to personal reasons. He is referring to Mike Williams, I think.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Shout out to Alfredo, first time watcher watching live. Thanks, Alfredo. Trade Brees for Neighbors and Pollard.
Yeah, I think I would do that. What's your roster look like? Jefferson, Deontay, Dell, Waddle.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that too.
I like that. Yes. I like that a lot, actually. Those are our questions. Ryan, this is good. We knocked it out of the park. Q&A set. Big trades examined. Set. Man versus machine for week 7. Check. And I have to play this, Ryan.
The machine.
Excellent. Well, you make sure you guys are following Ryan on the X at Ryan Reynolds NFL. Follow me on Twitter at FF Stalder. Subscribe if you like the content on YouTube, Player Profiler YouTube channel. You can also check out the Player Profiler News YouTube channel. I run that as well. So subscribe, like, give all the comments. Ryan, it's been great. This is excellent. Any last words for our people at home?
No, the playoffs are coming soon. So if you're in a good spot where you got 5+ wins, you can start thinking about optimizing your roster for money-making season.
You'd love to hear that. Start planning for the playoffs already. It's week 7. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.